this episode, Futurist and DAWNY of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Eric Pilon-Bignell and I came up with a few sketch ideas.
Oh, I just made this super intelligent computer that can outthink everything. Whoops, what do we do now? A discussion about blockchain, but like complete nonsense. The blockchain law drama, where there's no drama.
Like, which one did we pick? You'll find out on this episode of...
It's a sketch comedy podcast show.
Welcome to Sketch Comedy Podcast Show, the one-of-a-kind show where I, Stuart Rice, invite interesting people to have intriguing conversations and then improvise a comedy sketch based on what we talked about. It's the only show like it on the internet. Between the emergence of ChatGPT, Google's upcoming AI thing, and Microsoft's vaguely evil Bing, the world is definitely on the precipice of huge change. If you've tried these tools, well, you know. In fact, how do you know that any of the things that I'm saying right now aren't just part of the script that the hive mind came up with? It's getting scary and confusing, isn't it? Good thing we have people like this episode's guest, Eric Pilon-Bignell. Eric is a futurist who wrote a best-selling book called Surfing Rogue Waves, which I've read and is fantastic. And it's a great guide that gives you everything that's going on with the world. Like all the new technologies and new changes. Blockchain, it's in there. You know, AI, yeah. What's for dinner? Nah, you still got to come up with that. For now, there's going to be an algorithm, I'm sure. But Eric's book and Eric himself is actually going to help us like smoothly go into this brand new era that's going to show up. An era that honestly I'm very excited about because I know a lot of people talk about people losing jobs, but it's kind of my hope is that we don't have to have a lot of crummy jobs. I mean, think of all of those fortunate writers at all of those crappy websites with the listicles that don't have to do that anymore. It's great. Maybe they can actually start writing real stuff. Anyway, without any further ado, my conversation with Eric Pilon-Bignell.
Hey, Eric. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. I've got a question for you real quick. What makes you interesting?
I guess that depends who you ask.
Well, I asked you this time.
That's true, you did. Yeah, that is a good question. I'm not sure what makes me interesting. I almost feel like asking you what makes you interesting, but I'm sure you've probably got that a few times.
I have. It's a good stall technique.
Yeah. So now that I'm done stalling, I guess there's a few things that really make me interesting in a way. I think for the most part, I'm just a fairly average person who didn't have any kind of special superpowers or anything growing up, and I can't really say I knew anything. I never knew an author. I didn't know anything about how to publish a book, and I'm a best-selling author, so that's kind of fun. I couldn't tell you that I planned it that way without lying to you, but that's a neat probably interesting talking point, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely one that I'll ask a lot of questions on because I also wrote a book and it was not a bestseller. So, yeah. So you wrote a book called...
Yeah. Writing a book is definitely...
It's definitely... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's definitely interesting, at least for me. And this is ironic being, kind of an improv sketch comedy podcast. The book's got some improvisational theory and the importance of it, but to be honest with you, no one really talks about this out loud. But the way at least I wrote my book was I have kind of no clue what I was doing, and I just kind of kept going with it, and opportunistically I improvised my way when the opportunities came, and then I got an editor because I don't know, so I researched that and got a publisher, and then all of a sudden you're done this book, and it's this petrifying moment where you're like, uh-oh, I need to make this official, and I can't take it back and change it. And then reality of life hits you, and you're sitting there thinking, how does anyone know about this book? Do I have to market this book? How does this work? And yeah, so it was a crazy journey all the way through, and I don't think, at least I didn't have the sequential plan for it. There was a heavy component of improvisation, I guess we'll go with.
That's pretty cool. The book is called Surfing Rogue Waves. And how would you describe the book to somebody who had never heard of the book before?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not a technical book by any means. It's not a technical read. It's really addresses the rapid pace of disruption we're facing in our everyday lives, humanity as a whole. But if you bring that all the way down to us, the individual, right? We didn't vote for things like the internet or braces, but here they are. So we have all this change happening, and we tend to have this inability to notice change while it's happening. We just notice it after it happens. And I'm very positive on it. I think we'll solve incredible opportunities in these next kind of decades coming, but this exponential change is very different than the previous change we had, right? When you're getting into material sciences and nanotechnology and this robust pipeline of biotech and blockchain and AI, we are going to be changing everything we know about our lives, our worlds, ourselves as humans. And the book kind of paints a higher picture, not so much of the peak performance individual, but more a framework, a surfing framework, ironically, Surfing Rogue Waves, on how to navigate a lot of this onslaught of complexity and change, and how, when you understand this, you can project and see further into the future, because we understand these exponential trajectories of a lot of these technologies and megatrends, and we also understand complexity sciences and how we can't control it, which drives us nuts, but we can shape it in the right direction. So it's very much for that, for the individual, whether you're the CEO of your life, the CEO of a company, the boundaries are very blurry now between life and business, and we're very much moving kind of all at once at the same pace. And without this framework, it can be very overwhelming. Information, fake news, everything's an overload right now, and if you don't have that kind of higher level mindset to pull you out of it, it can come across as a lot. And we were taught a lot of things in life that are counterintuitive, but we should be doing more of now. If you told, at least you and me growing up, if we just winged it, that was a big no-no. And improvisation's not just winging it, it's very much an art and a science, but that's a lot more of what we need, because we can't accurately predict the change. We know the change is coming, we don't know when it's coming, in what order, and that drives us nuts, obviously, but we're seeing these trends, and as these trends augment each other and amplify each other, we get the emergence of rogue waves. So we have these different waves of complexity coming in, and every now and then they all collide at the same point, and there's this emergence of this violent rogue wave, it feels like. That's kind of what the book's about, paralleling with life, of course.
And we've never experienced the level of complexity and disruption that we're about to face. Like, we have never come close. I mean, the closest thing would be like the internet, and watching as lawmakers tried to fumble their way through making sure things were as best they could be, because there were so many different things that were out there that were brand new. I mean, you mentioned blockchain. Like, I still, I have investment in blockchain. I still have no clue what it actually does, how it's actually going to affect me on a day-to-day basis. Like, these are questions, and I can't be the only one, right? Like, everybody's got these questions. Absolutely. But it's almost like that meme, if you've ever seen the meme of Chris Pratt, and he's like, I don't know about blockchain, but at this point I'm afraid to ask, or I don't know about AI, but at this point I'm afraid to ask. Like,
I think the book unpacks a lot of that, and those are great questions you pose, and there are bigger elements to a lot of these questions as well, which see as we look into the future there a little bit, right? So these mega trends, blockchain, and the obvious ones are cryptocurrency, right? We watch that, but blockchain is going to do a lot more than that. You touched on one of them, for example, when we have in irreversible ledgers with complete anonymity. That's not the word I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. So you're following along with it. We have entire industries that change, right? Insurance industries, but lawyers, for example, we have smart contracts. You and me can I can buy my home from you, and this smart contract layered with some AI on top of the blockchain executes everything for us. You and me don't have to do anything. Our AIs can essentially just talk, and it's a secure, safe transaction. Well, now all of a sudden, what happens to entire mortgage industries, right? So but we're seeing that kind of across, and when you have we have, when I say robust pipeline, I just mean if this mega trend doesn't hit another one white, and that might sound very vague from a high level, but we might be off. The blockchain one might be 15 years out and not 5 years out, but 5 years out might be CRISPR, right?
Right.
Or it could be something else that, all of a sudden we have real-time monitoring and we understand nano and biotechnology better, and material sciences is really advanced, so we can track ourselves in real time. So doctors suddenly don't need to waste time checking up on healthy people. They can take care of sick people because I'm being monitored through data in real time through an AI that flags anything. We live longer. We kill a lot of diseases. We have autonomous cars. Suddenly there's less car accidents. Well, there's big problems there because, like, to your point, entire legal departments sadly depend on a car accident. That there is an entire industry. When I say industry, I mean not like a couple hundred people working. I mean like billions of dollars built around that. Suddenly our hospitals aren't as full. What happens? Our healthcare system collapses. Like there are massive disruptions that are so interconnected that we can't really decouple them and break them off and make, to your point, the bet on one, and we don't know exactly which will hit in what order. And the book really helps paint a little bit of that picture. We don't need to be a specialist and explain all of them. We just need to have an understanding of what's coming. So when we see them start to form, when we see these waves starting to collide and a rogue wave's coming, we can position ourselves in the best position, right? And no other time in our lives, kind of like you mentioned, will our decisions be so important. As small as they might be, they are ultimately going to shape, no matter the size, the fate of humanity. And that sounds all encompassing and over the top, but we can't really fight these waves of advancements and progressions, but we can use them to our advantage, right? And it's kind of riding surf where we find ourselves in a future state that's better all around for everyone, more successful for you, however you define it, maybe more family time, maybe getting closer with loved ones, or maybe making more money. Whatever it is, there are internet-sized opportunities in all of these mega trends, and they will appear one day as the internet. And there are certain people who were riding that wave pretty hard, pretty early. If you look at maybe Amazon and a few of these other ones, and I'd say they're doing pretty well right now. So they're not all, it's not all you got to be a Bezo here, but we have all these small interconnected, realistically, individuals, even in business, make upwards of 90% of their decisions are ad hoc, improvisational in a way, right? So we have all these small interconnected improvisational complexity that we have in our life, in our everyday life, how we manage we'd love to all, well, we wouldn't, I would, a lot of people would love to just philosophize, right, about AI and all these future mega trends. We have jobs, right? We have bills to pay and milk to put in the fridge and all this fun stuff. So the book kind of gives a 30,000 foot view and some of the ethical conversations we need to be having. You, me, anyone needs. As soon as you say AI, my wife's a great example. She's in healthcare. She just rolls her eyes and she's like, "Great robots, and then we're all going to die. Shut up." But really, there's ethical questions here, right? How, like, we can't. Is it wrong to deceive people with AI when they're not aware? Most people would say yes. And then it's like, if we're taking care of an aging baby boomer generation, and we understand that, it is deceitful, but it's okay because it actually releases the right serotonins and dopamines that actually make them happier through the end of their life. Well, suddenly we're okay with that, but now we're deciding what's okay and not okay, and what you and me think here, or maybe in the West culture as a whole, might be different than other cultures. So we have these trends that we can't manage in the way we've managed a lot of these problems in the past, right? We can't have do our own thing in this country, and something in another country. Rogue waves are good and bad. A great example is one we're fighting through right now. COVID, for example, blindsided us. We weren't ready for it. A clear example of how different parts of a single country, never mind a world, to handle kind of these global problems.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the AI, and so it's the people's perception of AI is very interesting. It's very interesting. And you brought up a very good example of the older generation. Maybe because as you get older, like, you have less people in your life. And so I bought my parents an Alexa, right? And my mom would actually have small conversations with the Alexa and have a little bit of joy. And then she could talk to me about it. And it's like, oh, she didn't even realize she was participating in the whole AI thing that she thought was scary and all of that type of thing. And it's it's one of those technologies, it's one of those things that we've developed that we'll probably not even realize is being implemented. It just starts to happen, and like the refrigerator knows that you're down on milk and gives the suggestion to grab milk. Who's going to dislike that? The refrigerator is basically manipulating you to giving it as a job, but that's not a negative. It's a positive. And so you probably run into a lot of those like arguments against newer technologies, or because people like to argue against them. I don't really understand them, but
they do, and I think our culture is a very shock and awe culture as well. AI has been, bastardized by Hollywood. When AI is going to be a problem, it's not going to be Evil T-1000 and Terminator. Why would an AI take on all of our inferior evolutionary biological problems, right? It would be a cloud-based thing that could just do whatever it wanted, and it could repurpose our atoms or some nanotechnology for wherever they wanted. It doesn't even have to hate us in general. But the book doesn't get into that as much, because that's getting a bit more like 30 to 50 years out. We're philosophizing at that point.
Ray Kurzweil said like 30 years. He was very specific.
Has been scarily accurate on something like 80% plus of his so something's coming, and his singularity is another one. But this is even before that. To your point, there are a lot of people who are like, well, put a pin in it, we should stop AI. But you can't stop AI because there's so many other things going. And when you explain, to your point, if you took someone, from 30 years ago, right, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, you mentioned we're going through so much more change now. We're experiencing 100 years of disruption every few years right now. So how's that for context, right? If you took someone from 50 years ago and you said, so check this out, we're going to give you this little metal and device, and it's going to have access to all of the knowledge of humanity. You can talk to it in real time. It'll give you back the information. It tracks every single thing you do. People would be like, you're crazy. Like, you've beyond lost your mind, right? Well, we have that. Those are our cell phones. Like, it's already there. So when people think AI, they think they think AGI or ASI or artificial general intelligence, or these like super forms of Hollywood movies where somehow this super form of intelligence goes head to head with us, and then we outsmart it at the end, because that's how it's going to end. I mean, when you understand exponentials and you look at like what happens after an exponential curve hits artificial general intelligence, that would be like you and me and an ant. And again, we don't hate ants. We don't care about ants, but we also just step on ants if they're in our way. We're not out to get them, but if we might raid them if they're in our house. But there's no way ants are going to predict the future of humanity. That makes no sense. That would be the equivalent of us trying to, outsmart the new ASI if we ever got to some kind of artificial super intelligence.
Right. What are the steps we need to worry about to get to that? Do you have a good understanding of like what are the technological steps we would need to get to now we're subservient? We will make great pets, as Perry Farrell said many years ago.
I think when you layer on some of the other technologies in material sciences and the biology and the science with the AI and all these things, we are going to remove incredible things. Sickle cell, you name it, all these pieces. It'll be incredible. We have this inability to draw the line between upgrading humans and fixing humans. So in the past, if you humans, and we've invented lots of great things, but with CRISPR, we will fix incredible technologies. And at the same time, we're also going to be able to do blue eyes, blonde hair, 6'8", super athlete, super smart. Who draws the line on when it's okay to be using some of these technologies? So the one of the first steps is we need to be having more conversations about these technologies, because they are not technical debates. In a book, I unpack a little bit of just the AI ones in a very real world sense, where you can say, I'm not into AI, I'm going off the grid, but unless you're throwing your car out and your credit cards, those days have passed, right? If you walk down the sidewalk, someone's Ring camera has facially profiled and understands all the data points of where you were exactly when and what day.
That's right. You putting down that you're not going to take the COVID shot because you don't want anybody tracking you when you're doing it on your cell phone on Facebook makes no sense.
Right. And I mean, a lot of us have like socials. We're given numbers that they literally track us for that we pay taxes on. Like, this is not anything new, No. So, but who has the rights to that data, and what can they do with that data? Who owns your data ultimately? If I asked you that, or anyone that, the people don't know, right? We don't have the answers to who owns that data, what they can do with that data. We have different countries doing different things, and when you look into like the deep convoluted neural networks are some of the major advancements right now in AI. And some people are trying to figure out to very much mirror our human brains. But the way it develops through multiple layers is it has all these little weights that it constantly adjusts on the information you put in, and it eventually gets you the answer. And that's where you kind of hear this black box, and you don't have to get into that kind of mess. But, depending on the information you put in, it's irrelevant to who designed or built the algorithm. That can build in cultural, problems and biases that might be, norms we don't want, that we've moved on from, believe it or not that long ago. And when I talk on a humanity scale, when you look back thousands of years and hundreds of years ago, there was one point when everyone was like, yeah, slavery's okay. And now we're like, slavery's not okay anymore.
It's appalling now. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we build in our current ethics and tell that to something that's going to exponentially expand into the future, we might have a lot of ethics right now. We're not right. Forcing kids, batch processing kids to go to school 8 to 3 every day might seem like barbaric to a more intelligent version of ourselves when we could have been using cognitive computing and stimulating their minds and getting them excited where they think they're playing games, but they're learning. We have all that technology now, and these are these ripe kind of shifts that we're seeing starting to build, and they're going to absolutely destroy industries. Education's a ripe one for disruption. I think, good or bad, again, we chatted quick about COVID. That's a bad one for sure. But we have been talking in industries forever about this digital transformation. So COVID comes around and it kind of forces the hands, and now all of a sudden companies are forced to work from home. They all haven't all done well, and not all jobs work out to work from home either. I'm not saying there's not lots of sadness and unnecessary, job loss, but for the most part, industry's done fairly well. If you take academics, well, they never cared about digital transformation. They ignored all the waves that were coming, and this rogue wave showed up, and now they're like, take an 8-year-old and stick them in front of Zoom for 8 hours. Like, what are you talking about? I can't even do
bananas,
that right now.
Right? How did we ever think that was going to be effective?
Yeah, just a complete, failure. And that just shows the difference between a mindset where, a lot of industry was looking and ready for this digital transformation, and academics were like, well, we've never changed in 100 years, so why would we change now? Well, that's why I have to change now, because that's how rogue disruption works. It doesn't care. If you're not disrupting yourself, you're dying nowadays. In a way.
Very true. Very true. You mentioned Amazon is a good company that has, and a lot of industries have really done a very good job of adapting. What are the keys? Like, what do you need to have in order to be good at adapting to this stuff? And you obviously improv, like being able to somehow foresee into the future and be able to come up with the proper line for everything. But what do you think are the things? Yeah,
I would unpack really quickly what I call the surfing framework, which is just to help us kind of view and I'll give you the cheat sheet version. So there's a lot more, obviously, to unpack.
Well, there's probably more than a couple pages to the book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it took me like 360 to get through it. But the surfing framework really identifies a complexity that we look for in our lives. So surfing can be broken down into 3 things, right? A surfer, waves, and a surfboard. So if we think of waves, that's the ocean. That's the world of complexity. That's our lives. It's always changing, right? It's moving. What makes a good surfer? Not the fact that they can do real-time computational physics and understand lunar and tidal patterns and know exactly where they just surf, right? It takes practice, general understanding. So that's a bit of the model. So we've got waves. we understand this through our environment, through complexity sciences. We look at a specific part of complexity sciences, which I equate to like the barrel of a wave. The ultimate move in surfing is to get in the barrel of the wave. But it's very counterintuitive, because the barrel of the wave is equally frightening and exciting. It's where you become way better, and it's such a rush, and it's so exciting, and you become a better surfer. But it also chews you up and spits you out every now and then when you fall. So if we live the way we're always brought up, move things back to the control in your life, right? Don't be in those uncomfortable spaces. You don't want to go full extreme, obviously full rogue. That's chaos. That's an entirely different kind of framework. But you don't want to stay in control either. You want to push for these certain points of pressure in life and in systems. And not all pressure is good. Some of it's toxic and you want to get out of there. But we need to embrace that uncomfort a lot more and give up and being okay not being in control. So we've got the wave. The surfer is us. We improvise. And so how do we stay in a barrel? Ultimately, we make the decisions, right? They're almost instinctive, but we've got to kind of understand that. But the third part is your surfboard. This is your rational foundation you need to stand on. You can't surf on your feet. You need a surfboard. Well, in life, you can't just improvise on wrong things, right? You need to improvise on rational things that map back to the reality of the world, right? And right now we're seeing a whole ton of misinformation. A lot of people have trouble kind of unpacking and falling into their biases and their old beliefs. And if you improvise off that and it's not accurate, right, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, right? You're not improvising in the right part of the wave. So really if I really dumbed it down, it's 3 steps, right? You want to look for these barrels, these points of pressure in your life. We identify this specific pressure within certain adaptive systems and complexity sciences as the need for new and novel solutions. So when you're in a situation and that's happening, it's there, right? New partnerships or relationships, right? Suddenly you're talking to this Alexa person in your life. Healthy conflicting perspectives. We shy away from that. Again, not unhealthy and toxic perspectives, right, but it's okay to challenge each other. It's not a dogmatic extreme one side or the other like we're seeing. We should have lots of overlap. We should have healthy conflicting perspectives, right? And there are situations when there's an interdependence that's, you're forced to kind of work together as your only kind of means of success. And that's uncomfortable, but again, those are good pressures we should look for. And as the surfer, this won't be anything new to you. You'll know it better than myself and anyone else, but for those listening, the improvisational part is an art and a science very much, right? So the importance of spontaneity and going with what feels like your gut sometimes, right? Or the classic yes and, but always be accepting to ideas. Don't shoot them down. Like accept, you can counter, you can do a lot of things, you can build off of them, but always be listening is a really big one. We all think we're great listeners. We're not. We're terrible. And to leverage those around us. So complexity works very much like that. A team's always stronger than an individual. So that's step 2. Step 3 is the surfboard, the rational foundation. And here we have to work. And this is the hardest part because it forces us to look inwards at ourselves. We're not proving this to anyone other than ourselves, but we got to be aware of our cognitive biases. We got to work to notice these biases. We got to be aware of our rational beliefs, right? Understand fake beliefs and belief errors and challenge things that maybe we were just always told was right, but we never really thought to think about why they were right. In the book, I think I call her Aunt Karen, but being open to letting facts change your mind. I think that's a big one, right? We get very much. It's one thing if you're cheering for your sports team. I'm irrational because I've cheered for the same sports team my whole life. I'll tell you they're going to win every year, and they're not. But life's not like that, right? We have to be open to letting facts change our mind, and I think remembering the strengths and weaknesses as we go through all this is machines in humans, and machines, I mean AI and all these technologies and everything. It's machines and humans are stronger together than either will ever be alone currently in our foreseeable future. So we're not at a point where either is replacing, and seeing those opportunities and thinking how we best leverage both of those, because the reality is when we're moving into new unknown waters, there's no data for that. But when it comes to predicting stuff, we have unfortunately been slaughtered by algorithms in AI, and they can predict things a lot better than us when they have the right data points. So it's very much a balance of those 3 elements, the 3 kind of pillars of that surfing framework, that when you understand that, and we go through some examples, and the first half of the book is a little bit more foundational in building this, and the back half gets really fun, and you kind of surfs up. We get in all kinds of fun situations, and it helps you kind of see it. And when you think like that, you start to view the world a little bit differently, your interactions a little bit differently, and you might not feel it in the moment, much like you don't really notice, friction coefficients in water in your surfboard when you're surfing, but you're surfing, right? And the last part is it's got to be pragmatic. You can be the most knowledgeable surfer physicist in theory in the world, unless you get out there and surf and take some wipeouts, like you're never going to do it. So we're going to screw up, we're going to fall. That's okay. Like we've got to it's better to do something and fail than nothing right now at the end of the day.
Yeah, action is definitely the most important thing you're going to do in any given day. If you're not doing anything, I mean, it would be neat if we could all be academics and think about all of that stuff, but someone's got to go out there and make that change happen.
For sure.
So you've got the hair for it. I'm guessing you surf?
I am a terrible surfer.
Are you? Well, at least you went out and tried.
Yeah, I try. I'm that idiot for sure. For me, I probably get up for what feels like 4 minutes, and it's probably 12 seconds, and it probably feels like an awesome 12-foot barrel, and it's probably a 4-foot wave. But I grew up kind of landlocked in Canada, right? Never got surfed too much, but did much of the wakeboarding and snowboarding and all that stuff, and I had some opportunities to spend a lot of time in Australia and in the west coast of the U.S., and I just kind of jumped in the water every chance I could. Again, not because I was any good, but I was never big, and I should have been, and I just wasn't. But I was never big, into yoga and a lot of this stuff, and I found surfing had this really perfect mix for me. You're sitting out there, and the water's almost flat, and you're waiting for sets, and it's so, bliss and tranquil and calming, and then all of a sudden it builds, kind of like life, right? And then all of a sudden you're getting dialed in and you're locked in, and you went from this like incredible zen calm to like so intense, because for me, I'm just trying to paddle so I don't die and get chewed up by this wave. But you're like, every decision you make, everything is like, again, you're improvising it, but everything matters, right? Shifting your body weight, your arms, how fast you're going, what you're looking at, where you're going. It's this amazing, and then you go there, you ride it for a bit. At least I do. I end up getting spit out and chewed up by the end, and spit some water out my nose, get back at it. But like that amazing mix is very much like why it parallels, I feel, so much to life. So I'm definitely not a good surfer, but I love to get in the water any chance I get.
Yeah, I've I lived on the ocean. I've never been surfing. You maybe just convinced me I need to go try.
Yeah, you're up. Are you in Portland?
No, I'm in Denver. I'm landlocked now. I'm in Denver now. But yeah, I was in Portland, but I graduated high school in Santa Cruz. I had friends that surfed. I had friends that surfed that would go, "Hey, I've got an extra everything. Like, let's go." And I just never did it. Yeah. Maybe I should call those people and see.
You know what else? You know what else is great about it? To be honest with you, all up and down there, you can go get a little, rent a board for the day or for a half a day and go on your own, and you kind of figure it out on your own a little bit. But it's just so, especially nowadays, we are so inundated with screens is the word I'm going to use, but it's your phone, it's this, you're on the computer, you're so connected. When you're surfing, there's nothing else you can do. You're there, you're present in the moment with your thoughts, and I think that more than ever is, and everyone's surfing, as we're going to call it, is different. It could be snowboarding or hiking or reading a book or writing music, I don't know, but whatever your surfing is, it's really important more than ever now with this kind of overload and stimulus. I feel that we kind of find our places to surf, because it's a cleanse, right? It's like a reset almost, where we're just so connected all the time, especially now that stuff's moved, right? Work from home, people are like, that's the last thing they look at is their screen when they put it down. It's the first thing they look at when they wake up, and they're literally on it the entire day. It's
that's 100% true. I do it too. I can't say
we're all
I
guilty.
Don't.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So I think those little, if you can find those little, spots in life to get away, it helps for sure.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, I could talk about this all day. I've read everything that Kurzweil's written, and your book is fascinating to me. But we do have to record a sketch.
Eric, I know my mind was blown during that. I'm pretty sure a lot of listeners were too. do me a favor. Your book covers so much more. Please tell them where they can find more about you and more about surfing rogue waves.
Yeah, I can be found at ericpb.me, ericpb.me, and the book's there, as well as this podcast and some other information on some of the initiatives I have going on. And on all of the social handles, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, of course, which are all a slash at ericpb.me version of whatever the handles are nowadays they're calling them.
And now our sketch, Law and Order BTC. In 3, 2.
In the criminal justice system, technology-based offenses are considered confusing and are largely swept under the rug. In New York City, the overpaid detectives and lawyers involved with these felonies are kept employed because no one else wants to deal with them. These are their stories. I'm telling you, your client absolutely committed this murder.
Look, Your Honor, I'm not really sure what he's talking about. I've been practicing law for 30 years, and there is zero evidence of any kind that can point anything to my client being even remotely close to the area in which this murder took place.
That is untrue. We have eyewitnesses that man over there is guilty of murder.
Well, that man over there is actually a woman.
Well, I do declare, I believe we will be able to prove this without an uncertain doubt that your client, be it man or woman, or maybe she should wear longer hair. Well, either way, we will make sure that person is declared guilty of this murder.
Well, I look forward to understanding that, because I can pretty much confidently refute all of the evidence that is going to be coming this way.
Well, how are you going to refute all of the evidence?
For starters, there's a encrypted ledger that can't be changed in any way, and if we look at that, I feel like we can pretty much answer most of our questions right there.
Oh, hold on a second. Let me see that. I rest my case. Yeah, there's no way this person could have committed this murder.
Thank you for joining us for Sketch Comedy Podcast Show. 100% not produced by AI. I promise you, it was a lot of hours on my behalf. Just real quick, I got to give you this legalese so that it protects me and protects you. Sketch Comedy Podcast Show is protected under Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License. What that means is if you would like to reproduce anything from the show, please contact the show at sketchcomedypodcastshow.com and let's talk and let's get you a really good, solid copy of whatever it is you want to reproduce. Until next time, go out there and create a comedy adventure of your own, and just make sure that it's real, I guess.
Oh, well, maybe we'll figure out how to do social media at some point. It'll evolve somehow.
There'll be a new one. We'll just wirelessly do social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.